What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back with another episode, guys. We are over a week out from the end of the 2024 NFL Draft for the Colts, and we are going to talk today in the immediate, looking forward to this upcoming season, 2024. Who are some of the rookies that we think are going to have some of the biggest impacts? Who are some of the rookies that we think probably won't factor in to 2024? And again, just to make sure that we clarify, we are not talking about these players in the future. We are talking the immediate 2024, which guys are going to contribute right away. Again, some other guys who maybe don't contribute in 2024 could be key contributors down the road. But just strictly for that, we're talking about this upcoming season. But before we get into that, just want to remind you guys and let you know that this episode is presented by PrizePicks. Be sure to hop over to prizepicks.com or download their app today. And when you sign up, use the code BTJ for a $100 deposit match. All right, Derek, we got to start. Let's jump right into this thing with the Indianapolis Colts. First pick here in the draft, 15th overall. The number one defender taken off the board, Latu, the edge rusher out of UCLA. Derek, I mean, obviously the Colts invested a ton into this guy, and they've invested in total a ton into their defensive line in terms of the draft. But when it comes to immediate impact, Latu is kind of interesting. What do you give him out of 10 in terms of immediate impact, and why do you give him that number?
I'd probably go with an 8 out of 10 here because, again, as you said, the Indianapolis Colts have not officially stated what his actual role is going to be in that defensive line, although we have heard that he's most likely going to be their third down rusher. So obviously, in the most important downs, Latu most times will see the field more than your guys in Kwity Paye. But that does not mean Latu is going to ultimately take over the majority of the snaps. We still have yet to hear from the Colts on what his actual role and how much playing time he's actually going to get. Because again, Charlie Partridge is coming into town. He's going to have control over this unit. He's going to have a better understanding of who it is that's actually going to dominate more in these particular situations. But it is no doubt that Latu will be out there and will be out in some of the biggest of moments for the Indianapolis Colts next year. So, of course, when you rank it 1 out of 10, 10 being the most contributing immediately to the season, Latu is 100% going to be up there in the higher numbers because you drafted him there for a reason at 15 to be that guy. You hope for him to eventually be the number one guy for the long term. But in terms of this year, despite the fact that Kwity Paye is still there, and Kwity Paye is a much better run defender than Latu is at this moment, Latu is still going to get his good amount of snaps and is going to get a lot of those obvious passing down snaps. So Latu, for me, stays there at an 8.
Yeah, it's interesting because the snap numbers are going to be something to monitor, Derek, when it comes to this defensive line. Number one, we know how much the Colts love Kwity Paye and what he does. We have our own opinions on Kwity Paye, but the Colts love him. We know that much. They were willing to pay him over $13 million guaranteed when they picked up that option. So it's clear they love him in whatever capacity, but you're right. I think he's going to have an option there and an opportunity right away. Latu is to really step into that third down NASCAR, IndyCar package when you're rushing the passer. I think he's going to factor in really nicely because we even saw last year, Derek, Kwity Paye, when it came to those pass rush downs, he got benched in favor of Tyquan Lewis. So if he got benched in favor of Tyquan Lewis, I mean, Latu clearly has a good chance here to be really impactful early on, and he's a guy that screams closer, right? He's a guy that, we all know from the Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis days, those guys were the closers, right? When the game was on the line, those guys had those impact sacks that won them the game. And we know how much the Colts have struggled to find players like that on the edge. And so Latu has a great opportunity here, whether or not he's a quote-unquote starter right away. Right, he has an opportunity here. He's going to get a ton of snaps. I mean, you don't draft the guy 15th overall and the first defensive player off the board to sit on the bench and barely get any snaps. So I think he's going to get a lot of snaps, whether or not he's listed as a starter. and I think he's going to have an impact. Will he have more snaps over Kwity Paye? I guess we'll have to see on that. Where does he kind of rank in terms of the hierarchy of snaps this year, and does he get more snaps as the season progresses? And we'll have to see all that. I think that's a great possibility that does happen, but I think despite the fact that maybe he doesn't have 90% of the snaps this year or whatever you want to put in there, I mean, the impact's going to be huge, especially if he does what he did in college, where he's just a force off the edge. He's one of the more explosive and, best defenders at getting pressure on the quarterback. I mean, the impact's going to be felt, no doubt about it. So, and those are the key moments that you need a guy like Latu to step it up. So, does Latu, in games last year where you needed a closer, does a player like Latu, does he come in and he wins you a couple more games because he is a player that is a closer, right? So that impact cannot be overstated. If Latu can come in here and do what he did in college at UCLA the last couple of years, I mean, no doubt he's going to have a major impact. But I think just from a pure, number standpoint in terms of how much time is he going to see, he's going to see a significant amount. And we'll have to see what that is. And I think he might even get, like we said, more snaps as the season progresses along, especially if he can just continue to become that, 3-down defender, right? So, but we'll see what the Colts do. Like I mentioned, their defensive line is so deep. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if some other guys get some snaps too, because it just keeps Latu fresh out there to get more pressure on the quarterback. But no doubt that out of probably all of them, and I'll just say this right now, he's the guy that we have as the highest impact out of any of these rookies the Colts took. But let's move on now, Derek, to round number 2. The Indianapolis Colts took Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. Impact-wise, that's going to be a question to see. Where does he kind of fit into this Colts offense? We know the skill sets are unique for Adonai Mitchell. But, Derek, what do you give him out of 10 and why?
Probably going with a 6.5 here out of 10. I know a lot of people really love this pick. I know you and I both love this pick. And we both feel that with more time, Adonai Mitchell will definitely become a great number 2 wide receiver on the outside for Indianapolis. But when we're talking about this year specifically, you're in a situation right now where you have, obviously, Michael Pittman's going to get the majority of the luggage thrown his way. Josh Downs has his own particular skill set. And people want to write off Alec Pierce. But Alec Pierce fits the mold of what the Indianapolis Colts want to have on the outside. A burner and a guy that blocks and is a willing blocker. A guy that is out there that will do the dirty work. And whether or not that's Adonai Mitchell's forte right now, I'm not 100% sure. No doubt that this season, Adonai Mitchell's going to go out there. He's going to get his snaps. He's going to have a couple big plays here and there. And he's going to be able to utilize his strengths and an offense from Shane Steichen that knows how to utilize a player like him. I don't think that we're going to see a season like what we saw with Josh Downs, where, he's getting 60 plus catches for, 700 yards and a couple touchdowns. I don't know if we're going to quite see that from Adonai Mitchell, but I mean, I could see a season of, 40 plus catches for, those 500 yards and maybe a touchdown or two, just something easier to start off, because he's obviously not going to just outright replace Alec Pierce right now. So that's why I'd probably go with a 6.5 right here.
Yeah, and, I pointed this out, I think, a couple podcasts ago, but I'll point this out one more time. Don't forget Alec Pierce, because last year, Derek, he played over 1,000 snaps for the Indianapolis Colts. He was one of the highest receivers in the NFL when it came to snap count. So he was out there a ton for the Colts. Now, again, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to sniff anywhere near 1,000 with Adonai Mitchell now factoring in. But what I'm saying is, don't be surprised if him and Mitchell split a few snaps, where it's not like this definite number 2 guy when it comes to the snap count. Wouldn't be shocked at all, because we talked about it. The Colts love Pierce. They love what he does down the field. They love his willingness to block. And you even saw it last year. He still can make plays when he's targeted down the field. So I think it's a good problem to have, certainly, if you're the Colts and with your Shane Steichen, Anthony Richardson, and all that. But Adonai Mitchell obviously has similar skill sets in certain ways to Alec Pierce, but also he's more refined in certain areas, specifically route running and some other things. that you feel like he can add just a different element. But yeah, man, I think that just that's a fair rating just because we don't really know right away. Like Josh Downs last year, it was like, if he beats out Isaiah McKenzie, he's got that role, right? And he did. He played a lot of snaps last year for Indy, but like now there's legitimate like competition there for that number 2 outside wide receiver room. And so I wouldn't be shocked at all if we see kind of more of an even split than people are thinking. It's not just going to be like Alec Pierce, you're relegated to the bench. Like I could see a legitimate competition going through training camp, going through the season, right? And maybe similar to Latu, where as Adonai Mitchell gets more comfortable with the Indianapolis Colts system, with the players around him, maybe his snap, count increases and out snaps Alec Pierce as the season goes along. But you never know when it comes to this. But I certainly think Mitchell provides a unique skill set to be potentially that number 1 wide receiver for the Colts in the near future. But when we're talking 2024, I think it's fair to say it could be not as big as maybe some people think, even though Mitchell has all the potential in the world.
Yep, 100%.
All right, let's go to round number 3. Matt Gonzalez, the offensive guard out of Pittsburgh / offensive tackle. We'll see where he plays. Derek, what do you give Gonzalez here when it comes to impact in 2024?
We're probably going right here with a 4.5 out of 10. And honestly, probably the only reason that it's that high is because with Gonzalez's unique skill set, I mean, he has more opportunities, honestly, Cody, to be able to be substituted in on this offensive line from time to time. We know he can play tackle. They talked about moving him into guard. So there's a lot more opportunity, and that's why it's a 4.5. And obviously, with his particular skill set, the Indianapolis Colts said that they really like this guy because he's the blueprint Colt, right? So no doubt that this is a guy that's going to go in there. He's going to definitely have some good reps in training camp. He's going to get the eyes of the coaching staff. They're going to keep him in mind for sure. Ultimately, you just probably won't see him out there unless there's an injury to a guy. I mean, we talked about this guy potentially being the future for the Indianapolis Colts at one of the guard spots or even at right tackle. But for this year specifically, I doubt we see anything more happen unless there's an injury on that right side.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see on that. Like you said, position flexibility, I think it's a guy like Gonzalez, it's his best friend. So he can play left, right tackle. He can play guard. Heck, they even talked about playing him at center. So, like, he can pretty much play anywhere the Colts feel like potentially. So that definitely goes great for him and his potential playing time because, I mean, no doubt, especially on the offensive line, the attrition of the NFL, it factors in. And we even saw it last year. The Colts had multiple starters miss time, miss games. And so that even stressed the importance even more, I think, for Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen about getting that quality depth in 2024. So definitely wouldn't be shocked if Gonzalez definitely starts a couple games or plays some significant snaps at times. I mean, we saw that with Blake Freeland last year. So I hope, obviously the hope is he barely gets any time this year. That's the hope. But, the reality is he probably does get some time somewhere. So definitely will be interested to see kind of what his role is.
As we said, guys, today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Now, what is Prize Picks? Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Instead of battling against thousands of other players across platforms, you're basically picking 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're choosing more or less on those stat projections to be able to watch those winnings roll in. It's very easy. Do you guys want to play along at some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and UFC fighter Sugar Sean O'Malley? Well, if you guys sign up today, you can find the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view the entries of some of the biggest names on the platform and be a part of that as well. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 just like that with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Like a lot of other things, guys, they also offer injury insurance, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if someone exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you, and the rest of your entry stays live. So it's great bounce back for that one. What I love about the app as well, guys, is it's not just sports like NBA, NHL, football, and tennis, and baseball, and all these other things, but there's also a lot of others that go into it as well. If you like to place entries on video game situations like Call of Duty, CS2, Apex, if that's something that appeals to you, there's a wide variety of sports and video games and everything else that you can place entries on. And I love how expansive it is. Even just looking at the NBA, there's entries you can make with turnovers, with points. You can do combo deals, dunks, field goals attempted, all of these different things. So there's just so many different ways to make money off of these entries. Be sure to download the app today and use code BTJ for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code BTJ for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, it's sponsored by Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Now, moving over to the fourth round, the Colts took center out of Wisconsin, Tanner Bortolini here. And I know, Derek, we don't quite have Bortolini rated as high in terms of instant impact, while he may be the center of the future in 2025 or even a little later. Right now in 2024, what do you give him out of 10?
We're probably going with a 3 out of 10 here. I know that it's just one of those situations where the further in you go when it comes to the interior of this offensive line, the harder it can kind of be to make a spot happen, especially at center. Because as you were talking to me about it before the video, I mean, again, Ryan Kelly is right there, right? And even if Ryan Kelly goes out, Wesley French is still good there. Wesley French, we've not had problems with Wesley French when he's playing at center. We've not had major issues. And, of course, Danny Pinter is now in there. You know, Danny Pinter now has the ability to play center or guard, depending on a lot of certain things. And Bortolini's skill set and how big he is what's kind of limiting him right now is just purely the size. That's what's going to ultimately get him early this year. It could be one of those things that late in the year, if one of the guys goes down and for a few plays and Bortolini has a chance to get in there, you know, and after, you know, about a good 6 months of working out and he's, you know, started to put on a few pounds, gets a little bit stronger, gets used to it. Maybe we see something then. But again, there's less opportunities at the center position right now for him. And it's, again, another piece where you and I have talked about it several times, saying this is a guy that for the future could be the future center for the Indianapolis Colts. But for right now, there's not a whole lot of opportunity for Bortolini, barring something crazy happening.
Yeah, and I think if the Colts were smart back in 2022 and they would have actually properly addressed left tackle, Derek, I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say their plan wasn't to have Bernhard Raimann really play a whole lot in his rookie season. Unfortunately, Matt Pryor was the human equivalent of a garbage can when it came to playing offensive line for the Colts. It was pretty bad, and so it basically forced the Colts' hand into throwing Bernhard Raimann kind of to the wolves a little bit. But I think when it comes to Bortolini, the plan is similar to Gonzalez, and probably even a little bit more here. The plan is probably for the Colts to just kind of have him redshirt this year, essentially, right? Kind of sit behind Ryan Kelly, kind of learn, grow, and get a little bit bigger, right? Because similar to Bernhard Raimann, he comes in very athletic, but he comes in slightly undersized. He's got to probably put on 5-10 pounds of muscle, get a little bit stronger, and do you think next year maybe he can take that type of leap, right, or a similar type of leap that Bernhard Raimann took in his, rookie season to year 2? That's kind of the hope. And the Colts kind of have a template now with Bernhard Raimann where they've proven that can happen, right? And we obviously know Bortolini. He's got the athleticism, one of the most athletic centers that we've ever seen coming out of the draft. He's got the smarts. So, he's got everything there. Just physically, he's got to get a little bit bigger and stronger. So he kind of has a redshirt year here, like he talked about, as he kind of hits the weights, get into kind of the Colts training program a little bit more, the nutrition program, gains a little bit of weight, gains a little bit of muscle. Ideally, you'd like for him to kind of be sitting there, and obviously, if he needs a spot start, whatever, get him a little bit of experience. But overall, not till next year when he's seriously considered for a starter. Now, again, you talked about it, Derek. Unless something happens where the Colts are just decimated by injuries, especially at center, I think you would definitely prefer if Bortolini doesn't really see the field a whole lot and just more quality depth here in year number one. That's the ideal thing in a perfect world. Of course, we know that rarely ever happens where everything goes according to plan. But I think if it all goes according to plan, I think a 3 is absolutely fair there for Bortolini. Now, let's move on to round 5. The Colts had 3 fifth-round picks here. The first guy here, I think, Derek, I think this is why we kind of have a higher grade on this guy. We had Anthony Gould here, man. This is going to be interesting because very, very good return man in college out of Oregon State. Very, very good. One of the best in college football the last couple of years. And I think, Derek, that's why we probably have him a little bit higher here. But talk to me about Anthony Gould and what rating you have for him out of 10.
We're going to go with a 6 here for Anthony Gould. And, the reason why it's so high is because I think you and I both agree that this is a role where Anthony Gould's going to go out there and basically be your main return guy. What the rules are becoming for returns. A guy like Anthony Gould and his skill set is just so perfect for what you're trying to accomplish. And we've heard Shane Steichen talk about how he might try to utilize him in a few certain packages on offense, so there's definitely a few snaps coming his way offensively for sure. So Anthony Gould is definitely primed to have some kind of production, maybe nowhere near as much offensively as what Adonai Mitchell is going to experience. But of course, like we said, Gould is going to be your return guy. And that's a huge role. And for the Indianapolis Colts who take special teams extremely seriously, that's not a role to be taken lightly. So Anthony Gould sits out on a 6 here.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Returnability, we talked about that, how key special teams can be. And especially kind of with the new, kick rule now, I think even more having a guy like that, just an elite athlete that can make, grown men miss in space. I think that's definitely a big, big deal there for the Indianapolis Colts. And again, he maybe does factor in a little bit when it comes to the offense. He's got the explosiveness. It's just the size. That's the only kind of detriment, if you will, to his game. But he's got everything else that you really like. And he showed a little bit of his prowess, at Oregon State last year in the receiving game. So he does have some upside there. Let's move on, Derek, to the second guy here of the 5th-round picks, Jaylen Carli. So we have him actually a little bit. It's going to be interesting because he was listed as a safety. He's going to move down to linebacker. He's got a lot of athletic traits that you like. He's got some size, some length, some athleticism. But when it comes to immediate impact, where do we have him at?
Yeah, Carli's here is going to be sitting at a 5. And for kind of the same reason as Gould, really. You're in a spot where Carli's could really find an impact, particularly on special teams. We've always, again, talked about some of the best situations for some of these players, and Carli's can really be a great player for the Colts on punts, kickoffs, all of those particular things. Don't know how many defensive snaps he's actually going to get, but again, finding an impact on special teams is where this guy is going to make his bread and butter early on. And if he can take full advantage of that, then you're going to get a role, and a role that remains on the roster. So there's a 5 for you.
Yep. All right, we have 3 more here. The final of the Colts' 5th-round picks, Jaylen Simpson. He listed as a safety as well, but he may play some corner for the Colts. What do we have for him here, Derek?
I think this is the first one where you and I were kind of just like, we don't know the role here. Simpson with a 2.5 at this point, because like you said, we don't know what this guy's role is actually going to be. And if he moves to corner, again, you already have a pretty deep corner room. Even if you're in a spot where I know a lot of people talk smack about the corner room as it stands, but again, you have Juju Brents, you have Dallas Flowers, you have Jaylen Jones. At best, Simpson is the fourth corner on this roster. At
Kenny
best.
Moore. Don't forget Kenny Moore. Don't forget Kenny.
Yeah, and and Kenny there at the nickel. So I mean, you're at best he's the fourth corner on this roster. So it's one of those situations where I just don't see a spot where Simpson gets it. And if he doesn't move to corner, it's not like his avenue gets any easier if he stays at safety, because there's so many safeties behind our starters right now. It's impossible to see if he'd ever able to get any snaps.
Especially if they sign, a free agent safety, which we think that's still in the cards for Indy. So, yeah, definitely don't know what his role is right away. Probably just special teams to start, and I guess we'll see from there. But, yeah, regardless of the position, there's not really a spot for him right now, at least when it comes to a major impact type of thing. Maybe he makes a little bit of noise on special teams. We'll see on that. Now, two more guys here, one in round 6 and one in round 7. The guy in round 6 is quite interesting here, Derek. Micah Abraham out of Marshall. I think it's interesting because he plays some slot corner. And we know right now the Colts haven't really had a great depth option when it comes to the backup slot guy behind Kenny Moore, right? I mean, they tried different guys last year, really didn't have a lot of success with it. Now, could Micah Abraham potentially, even slide in and have more of an impact right away from a guy like Jaylen Simpson? Be a good kind of Kenny Moore insurance type of guy. Again, we have no idea what he's going to look like in the league, but he has that experience as, a slot corner. So could he be very valuable to what the Colts do?
Yeah, sitting here with a 3.5 out of 10 could definitely be a very interesting pick here for Indy. I think he definitely makes the back end of this roster with being a nickel corner. He's going to be that one guy that's going to be the backup to Kenny Moore. The production speaks for itself from what he was like in college. And I think that the Colts understand that, and they know this guy knows ball. And I have confidence that this guy is going to show out in training camp with some of the knowledge that he has. So I'll go with a 3.5 here, just because I think there might be just a tiny bit more options to figure out what to do with that.
We'll see on him. All right, and the final pick here for the Colts, Jonah Lalo. I mean, Derek, I think we can say pretty easily he's 1 or 2, probably 1.5, right? If we're going to, right in between a 1 and 2. For me, Derek, you look at him, I mean, wasn't super productive in college. Really just, the only thing that stands out to me is the traits for a guy like Lalo, and also the fact that the Colts, their defensive line, I mean, we talked about it already, even with Latu, right? How deep this defensive line is, I just don't see a role for him, to be honest with you, at all on this Colts roster. To me, this very much last year screamed a guy like Titus Leo or Jake Witt, a guy that the Colts purely took on, more of those traits, and hopefully you can develop them into something. So, what do you say about a guy like Lalo here?
Yeah, like you said, the traits guy, back end roster guy that does just tries to filter himself into the roster somehow. Most likely a practice squad guy, like you said, very minimal opportunities here, especially on a extremely packed defensive line group that we have right now. So, yep, it's probably 1.5, as you said.
Yeah, so, well, guys, that does it for Instant Impact for the Indianapolis Colts rookies. Curious what your guys' thoughts are. Do you agree with our list and our rankings here out of 10 for the guys that we think will make impacts or not? Let us know all those things in the comments down below. But, guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. You guys are the best. That'll do it for this one. Thanks, guys, and go Colts.